All right, so he's swallowing all of the kids. He swallowed Hesiod, he swallowed Demeter, Hera, Pluto, Poseidon. Now, enraged at this, Rhea repaired to Crete. So she went out and hid in Crete when she was big with Zeus. So in other words, she's going to have a new baby, Zeus. All the rest of them are he ate them. Kronos ate all the rest of them. So Zeus she's about to give birth, and brought him forth in a cave in Dicta. She gave him to the Curies and two nymphs, and his daughter of Melissa to the nurse to take care of him. She didn't want him being eaten. So the nymphs fed the child on the milk of Amalthea, and the curtain arms guarded the babe in the cave. Now every time Kronos came around, they started clashing their spears on their shields in order that Kronos might not hear the child's voice. But Rhea wrapped a stone in swaddling cloth and gave it to Kronos to swallow as if it were the newborn child. So he just grabs it and he eats it. So he ate the stone thinking it was the child. When Zeus was full grown, he took Metis, his daughter of Ocean, to help him, and she gave Kronos a drug to swallow. So now they're going to get rid of Kronos. So Zeus is full grown now, and he gets together with the rest of these guys, and they gave Kronos a drug, which forced him to disgorge first the stone, then the children who he swallowed. They were still all alive in his gut. And with their aid, Zeus waged war against Kronos and the Titans. So they went after Kronos and the Titans. They fought 10 years, and Earth prophesied victory to Zeus if he should have all allies, those who had been hurled down to Tartarus, which he did now. So he slew their jailoress, Campi, and loosed their bonds, and the Cyclopses then gave Zeus thunder and lightning and a thunderbolt. The Cyclopses they made the weapons. And on Pluto they bestowed a helmet, and on Poseidon a trident. Armed with these weapons, the gods overcame the Titans, shut them up in Tartarus. So they're inside the gut of Gaia, which is Tartarus, and appointed the 100-handers as their guards. But they themselves cast lots for the sovereignty, and to Zeus was allotted the dominion of the sky. To Poseidon got the sea, and Pluto got Hades. Now, to the Titans were born offsprings. Now it gets real complicated. Let me just sum it up for you, because, this goes on and on forever. Look how we're only up to 1.2.2. We're still down here. We're still way down here. 1.2. And then it goes to the Olympian gods, Apollo and Artemis, the war of the giants, Typhon. This is the one I want to get to, is Typhon, because this is what tells me that this stuff is not fake. And this Typhon was just before Prometheus and Deucalion. And guess what? Who Deucalion is? Deucalion is Noah. All right, and that was Noah's flood. This was not long ago. All right, let's cut right to Zeus and to how he took over the earth and how the giants were born. Zeus wedded Hera, which was his sister, and he begat Hebe, Lithia, and Ares. But he had intercourse with many women, both mortals and immortals. This is the beginning of the giants and the gods. Themis, the daughter of Sky, he had daughters. The seasons, peace, order, justice, also the fates. This is just crazy, because these are personifications of feelings and all kinds of stuff. Then it gets down to Apollo and Calliope, and Hercules slew this one, and it goes on and on and on. It really is as crazy as any human being could possibly come up with, any of this stuff, but it appears to be true. And when we go to 1.6.3, then you'll see. Now Hera gave birth to Hephaestus without intercourse with the other sex. According to Homer, he was one of her children by Zeus. Now Zeus had all kinds of kids, and these grew up to be the giants and monsters and all kinds of abominations. And this is when he decided, that's it, we got to get rid of it. This is crazy. I made a big mistake. Let's flush the earth. Because Zeus was Jupiter. Jupiter gave birth to Venus. Venus came and caused a flood and then hit Mars and destroyed Mars. You see this? These are monstrous sizes. Apollo slew Marcellus, the son of Olympus. Artemis slew Orion. I mean, everything is death and killing and tearing to pieces and monsters and all kinds of. Just Orion was killed. Some say challenging Artemis to match at whatever that is. Some say he was shot by Artemis. Poseidon wedded Amphitrite, daughter of Ocean, and was born Triton and Rhode, and who's married the sun. I mean, it just goes on and on. It's just, like I said, and this we're only into the first chapter, and Zeus ordered Pluto to send up his maid, and Pluto gave her a seed of pomegranate to eat in order that she might not tarry long with her mother. I don't know what to make of this stuff. It's just, the battle Poseidon attacked Hercules and Hera, and nevertheless Zeus inspired him with lust for Hera. And when he tore her robes and forced to have sex with her, she called for help. Zeus smote him with a thunderbolt. Hercules shot him dead with an arrow. As for the other giants, Ephes was shot by Apollo with an arrow in his left eye and by Hercules in his right eye. I don't know, when the gods had overcome the giants, Earth, listen to this. This is where it gets crazy. We're still only in the early stages here. This is the first part, 1.6.3. All right, so we've gone through the giants and all these crazy things, and the Hercules shooting people with arrows. Now, when the gods had overcome the giants, Earth was still more enraged. That's Gaia. She had intercourse with Tartarus, which is hell, and brought forth Typhon. He was the hybrid between man and beast. In size and strength, he surpassed all the offspring of Earth. He was the biggest. As far as his thighs, he was of human shape and of such prodigious bulk he outtopped all the mountains. His head often brushed the stars. One of his hands reached out to the west and the other to the east, and from them projected 100 dragons' heads, which Zeus burnt off. I was looking for those. I couldn't find them. Zeus burnt them off. That's why I couldn't find them. From the thighs downward, he had huge coils of vipers, which when drawn out reached to the very head and emitted a loud hissing. His body was all winged, unkempt, hair streamed on the wind from his head and cheeks, and fire flashed from his eyes. Such and so great was Typhon, when hurling kindled rocks, he made for the very heaven with hissing and shouts and spouting a great jet of fire from his mouth. This was when Zeus killed him. But when the gods saw him rushing at heaven, they made for Egypt in flight, and being pursued, they changed their forms into those of animals. They changed into animals. Zeus turned himself into a ram, and all the other ones turned into all kinds of crazy animals. Venus turned into a fish. Now, however, Zeus pelted Typhon at a distance with thunderbolts in close quarters and struck him down with an adamantine sickle, and as he fled, pursued him closely. And then they go through all these different areas, Mount Caucasus, which overhangs Syria. Seeing the monster sore wounded, he grappled with him. Typhon twined about him and gripped him in his coils, and wrestling him, severed the sinews of his hand and his feet, lifting him on his shoulders, carried him through the sea to Sicilia, and deposited him on all I can tell you is what I can see is that Zeus did smote. He killed Typhon. He cut his throat. And that's what it says somewhere in here. Hold on. So Typhon cuts Zeus's tendons out. But Hermes and Acpion stole the sinews and fitted them back unobserved onto Zeus, and having recovered his strength, Zeus suddenly appeared from heaven, riding in a chariot of winged horses, pelted Typhon with thunderbolts, and cut his throat. And and they talk about Mount Etna and so forth. I'm not relating it to the places today that they call these places, like Mount Haemus and so forth. But he's laying right there in the desert, and I'll show you him in a second. Prometheus molded men out of water and earth. This is when men started. All right, after Zeus killed Typhon. He's right on the surface of the earth. All this stuff is on the surface of the earth. And Zeus was here 3,500 years ago. And I will explain to you how I know that for a fact, because his daughters, which are the Muses, he had a bunch of daughters called the Muses, and they were singers and dancers and all this stuff. And they met this guy Hesiod, who was the original writer of most of this text, I believe. He was 800 BC. Now that's only 3,000 years ago. And he wrote all of this about Prometheus molding men out of water and earth. He gave them fire, which Zeus did not like that. Prometheus gave him fire, and Zeus did not like that. He had hidden the fire in a stalk of fennel. When Zeus learned of it, he ordered Hephaestus to nail his body to Mount Caucasus, which is in Scythian mountain. On it, Prometheus was nailed and kept bound for many years, nailed to the side of a mountain. Every day an eagle swooped on him and devoured the lobes of his liver, which grew back by night. And that was his penalty that Prometheus paid for the theft of fire, until Hercules afterwards released him, as we shall show in dealing with Hercules. Now, Prometheus had a son, Deucalion. Prometheus' son, Deucalion, was Noah, from Noah's flood Noah. He reigned in the regions about Pythia, and he married Pyrrha, a daughter of Hephaestus and Pandora. She was the first woman fashioned by the gods. Now, we all know about Noah's flood. Well, it was Deucalion's flood by the Greeks. And here's what happened. When Zeus wanted to destroy the men of the Bronze Age, he says, this is it, these people are crazy, let's wipe them off the face of the earth. Deucalion, who was Noah, by the advice of Prometheus, which was his father, constructed a chest, which was the boat. And having stored it with provisions, he embarked in it with Pyrrha, his wife. Zeus, pouring heavy rain from heaven, flooded the greater part of Greece, so that all men were destroyed, except a few who fled to the highest mountains in the neighborhood. It was then that the mountains in Thessaly parted. All the world outside the Isthmus and Peloponnese were overwhelmed. Peloponnese was overwhelmed. But Deucalion, floating in a chest over the sea for 9 days and as many nights, drifted to Parnassus, and there, when the rain ceased, he landed and sacrificed to Zeus, called the god of escape in this particular case. And Zeus sent Hermes to him and allowed him to choose what he would. He said, I want men. He said, what do you want to choose? He says, I want men. I need men to cover the earth. So at the bidding of Zeus, they took up stones. Now listen to this. They threw them over his head. So Noah threw stones over his head, and the stones which is Noah, which Deucalion threw, became men, and the stones which Pyrrha threw became women. Hence people were called, metaphorically, people, Laos, a stone. And Deucalion had children with Pyrrha, and then it goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. I mean, this, again, we're still only in the first chapter of the first book. You see this? This is Hesiod. He's the one that wrote what the daughters of Zeus told him to write, and he was here 700 BC. Hesiod himself attributes his poetic gifts to the Muses, who appeared to him while he was tending his sheep, giving him a poet's staff and endowing him with a poet's voice. They bade him sing of the race of the blessed gods who are immortal. And this was up on Mount Helicon. And these are the daughters of Zeus, or the Muses. And like I said, I'm not going to get so deep into this in every single detail, but the Muses are the daughters of Zeus and Monezime, and there's the names and so forth. And they were the ones that approached Hesiod to write the history. And he wrote a lot. All right, this is Metamorphosis. It's a book written by Ovid, who was a Greek Roman in that area. I guess they call him a Roman poet. And this was during the time of Julius Caesar, right around 0 AD, 8 AD. Now, this is written by Ovid, who took all of the ancient texts and compiled them all together. And he's got book 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 10. Look at this. He goes forever writing. Now, what is it? First words out of his mouth are, he says, this metamorphosis is a transformation, like a caterpillar to a butterfly. Metamorphosis, the unifying theme. All of them have the same thing. They could transfer themselves. These gods could turn themselves into planets or bugs or fungus or rivers or anything they wanted. And here's what it says right here. It says in the first lines of his works, it says, in novo fert animus mutatus decere forum corpora, which means I intend to speak of forms changed into new entities. Now listen to this carefully. It says, accompanying this theme is often violence. It was nothing but violence from day one. It's inflicted upon a victim whose transformation becomes part of the natural landscape. That's what he wrote. That's almost the first words he wrote. It says the theme amalgamates a much explored opposition between hunter and hunted, and then the tensions between art and nature, and all of these personifications of all the feelings. And I mean, apparently God personified all of these different things that we feel as feelings, and hate and distress and all of that were actually like creatures almost. I don't know. I get very confused. I got to be perfectly honest with you. This is way, way, way out there. Now, listen to this. It says there's a great variety among the types of transformations that take place. Humans can become inanimate objects, like the Nile River or constellations. They can become animals. They can change from animals into ants and fungi and mushrooms. Then change them back into humans. They can change sexes, and they can become colored pebbles, anything they want. At other times, transformations are developed into humor and absurdity. Well, everything's absurd. They think this was absurd because it is absurd, but it's true because it is true. And if you see our friend Typhon, I don't see how you can deny any of it. Once you see that, the rest just has to be true. All right, I've shown this literally hundreds of times. This is Typhon. He runs all the way across North Africa. All right, these are the thighs of the human, and then the coils coming down here. And here's his head. And this is what he looks like right here. Let's go take a quick look at him. His red flared eye. There's his red flared eye flashing back. This is his head. Right here. And there's all the streaming flare, flashy this and that, all coming off him. That right there is his throat. This is the flashy stuff you see on the parades in China. They have running down the dragons. This is his nose, and these are the beards. And this is what discharged down to kill the fish down below him. Now this is his throat, and these are dragon scales on his throat. You see these dragon scales? All of this stuff is blood that ran off of him. This is all bloody, washed off stuff, that body fluids. This is his throat. Runs all the way down, until he was cut with the adamine sickle. So these are scales. These are dragon scales. That's the tube, which was his throat, which he would swallow people and stuff. All right. In between each of the scales, it runs off a little bit of the body fluids. All right. Now it comes down all the way down. Scales, throat, scales, all the way down, and then this flashy stuff running down the side of him. See how flashy looking stuff coming down? And then this right here is where it got cut. That's the cut right in his throat. And all that blood ran out here. All that black and red blood ran out from his gash through his throat. And he runs all the way across North Africa. And they talk about his legs being like thighs, and then they come out to coils. Well, their coils run way over to here. And this right here is the same kind of stuff as is like ostrich leather. These are the coils that he has, and this is the skin that is on those coils. And it is literally leather. Let it sink in. It takes a while for this to come in. It's coming in now. You see that? If you get some ostrich leather or some kind of leather, you'll see it. It's just exactly like this. This is not sand dunes. That's leather. You go to any tannery and ask them what that stuff is, and they'll say, well, that's leather. And what they do is they roll it out and they turn it into sheets of leather. And that ran right down from here. And they said it way, way, way out here, all of that. And here is still his tail over here. These are the scales from his tail also running off the blood out of it. This is a low spot. All of the body fluids have accumulated here, and now they're running out. And these are the dragon scales. All right, remember the scales, what they look like? There they are right there. And there's all that body fluids running out of his tail. And then the tail continues on, and it's still flashy over here. It turns into some kind of flashy looking, feathery looking stuff. And it comes all the way out right to the tip of his tail, which is way out here. This flashy looking stuff, I don't know, it's some kind of feathery looking stuff. So that's this dragon, and he was the size of that they talk about. This is almost, I think it's 1,000 miles or more long from here to here. Standing up, he'd be at least 3 times higher than the space station. So brushing the stars, yeah, I can go with that. And he spit out all of this nasty venom coming out of his throat here. Coming right down here. All of that black stuff is nasty dragon venom. And it landed on the fish's back right here. And this is a fish. Now, you have Google Earth. I'm not going to belabor this. I've been so many times. I'm about done keeping showing this. People don't want to see it. You don't see it. Do whatever you want. It's up to you. That's a fish. These are the scales. You see the scales? It would go this way. I believe that's his eye. This, I don't know what that is. But I think that's his eye. That's his fin up here. And Typhon spit toxins down on his fin, ate right through his fin, all the way down, just like acid, all the way down to his blood vessels. These are blood vessels. You go to any doctor and say, what is that? He'll say, well, those are arteries. Those are blood vessels. All right, so don't forget, this is nothing more than blood vessels. That's the vein, bringing it back. These are the capillaries, blood vessels, arteries. And the only place you see anything growing here is where the red blood was. You see, these are where the red blood is. You don't see anything growing except for where the red blood was. Red blood makes things grow fabulously. Red blood and feathers too. Feathers also make things grow very, very, very well. And don't forget, this was all of North Africa. This is very, very big place up here. That's all of this North Africa is this event. All right, so that's a pretty good sized thing, and that's exactly what was written. You could take it for whatever you want, but I'm saying right now this was the venom coming out of Typhon. You have to do some work here. You can't absorb this quickly, or at all in a lot of cases. A lot of people's minds cannot come to the fact that this could possibly be true. Now, I'm looking at it now as that it was true, and where does that leave Jesus Christ? Because we're only talking 3,000 years ago this happened. This is only 3,000, 4,000 years ago. Velikovsky puts it at 3,500 years ago was the impact of Venus causing all of this destruction on Earth and all the mud fossils. And Yale now agrees there was a time, that very brief instant in time, when the whole world was covered with this salty saline water. It was saturated with silicates, which I understand fully because it was a hot water flood. Venus almost hit Earth. When it did, it compressed all of the gases in the atmosphere and crushed it and condensed it into water, but it's boiling water. In addition to that, 7 days of approach of Venus, which was glowing 10 times brighter than the sun, baking the Earth to begin with, and then the impact finished it off. All right, now I drew a lot of my work from Velikovsky, who was destroyed. He came up with Worlds in Collision, which was a compilation of all of these ancient writers' texts. And he went to every single culture on the planet that he could find, to their libraries, their museums, their ancient cultural centers, their oral traditions, their histories, and he found that everybody had the same story. 3,500 approximately years ago, about 1,500 BC-ish. There was this impact of Venus into Earth, destroyed everything, and it was a huge, terrible flood, and it created all my mud fossils, and then that same body, which was Venus, continued on and actually impacted with Mars. It almost hit us, caused a lot of electrical problems, well, issues. They didn't have electricity back then that I know of, but it created a lot of electrical discharge, which turned the bilipid membranes, which are phospholipids, turned those into silicates. That's where all the silicates came from. And then they were in the oceans, and then that's what solidified all the mud fossils and turned them into what they are. Like this is a hair follicle from a giant hair. All right, that's where the erector pili muscle attaches. That's where the sebaceous gland is. That's the hair. And there's the root. And those two little spots there are the blood vessels. This is all true. And I have my stuff is DNA tested and CAT scanned and everything else. And there was all kinds of creatures here. There was some our size and some gigantic ones. There were all kinds of things. And that's why Zeus had to wipe it off the face of the planet. And he did. And here's how he did it. All right, this is Zeus, the Jupiter. But don't forget, metamorphosis, they could change it to anything they wanted. That's where the red spot is, and that's the size of Earth or Venus, both. And it was born from that red spot. It's exactly what the ancient texts say. And here's how it was born, just like this. It came out, and it spins backwards, because Jupiter spins this way. It was ejected out, which would make it roll backwards. So this rolls this way. Venus is the only one in the solar system that goes backwards, and all the other planets spin this way. But coming out, it would automatically spin backwards. And then for 7 days, it approached Earth and cooked Earth. Now, when it hit Earth, here's what happened. Whoops, hold on, I don't have Earth. Well, actually, I don't need Earth. We need Mars and we need Venus, because Venus is it right here. Look at this. What is that? I know exactly what it is. That is an electrical discharge. You see that? And that's because when it hit the electric field of the other planets, it discharged. Absolutely unbelievable amount of discharge. That's an electrical scar. Any welder can tell you that's an electrical scar. Now, what happened to the other planets that it hit? Well, Earth just created the flood, and it boiled the atmosphere on Earth, completely boiled it, basically. And I don't know if all the oceans boiled, but most of the waters on Earth literally got to the boiling point, almost. The oceans, I don't know. But it wiped everything off the face of the planet except Deucalion and Pyra, and they recreated people by throwing stones over their back. Now, this is the time of the Great Flood. And the Great Flood was the time of all these creatures that were just bizarre creatures all died. And Yale agrees with this now. They agree with my research. I'll show you the paper that they wrote. It's one layer on worldwide that has all of these creatures, and then after that they were gone. So there's Venus, discharging electrical, and it actually literally smashed into Mars right here. Look at that. This is wider than the United States, and that gouge was smashed through there and discharged electricity and smashed and tore everything up and destroyed Mars, ripped its atmosphere completely off. So there's nothing left on Mars that I know of that's alive. I could be wrong, but that's what I see. Now, where did that birth come from? It came from a vagina. That is literally a vagina on Jupiter. That's the great red spot. And if you look at this carefully, you can't miss it. That right there is the tag, that there's a tag on every body part that holds it into the body, and that's what holds the vagina from floating all over the place. So, and this is literally the hairline. I'm not kidding you. This is, you know, I've shown the anatomical, and there is no difference whatsoever. And you know, most women would know what that is. And most guys would too. All right, now, what is this? This is just happening right now. That red spot is about to give birth again. It's sloughed off. This is back to 2019. They thought it was going to disintegrate and just go away. But no, it's crowning the cervix. And the blood is flowing off it. They said slabs of red whatever were floating off. And there they are right there. And this is only a few years ago. Now, a planet-sized creature is going to take a while to give birth. And literally, this could happen any day now. As far as I'm concerned, and they talk about the end of the Earth. There's going to be a time when, if all this stuff is true, and it appears to be true to me, the prophecies that are going to happen to the Earth will likely happen. And if they do, when? Well, this looks like it could be any day now, as far as I'm concerned. All right, just to bolster my point here, this is October 2016. I presented all my research to Yale way before this and wrote a book in 2016, or January 2016, about my encounter with Yale. And they claim now they're taking credit for Yale-led research team found that the Ediacarta biota, a collection of marine fossils, marine means ocean fossils, found in sandstone around the entire world, record the operation of an unusual mechanism, preserved impressions of creatures' soft bodies hundreds of millions of years. The finding appears in the journal Geology. I presented this to them long before this. Now listen to this. Many of them are outright bizarre in appearance and do not resemble any organism alive today, said Lydia Tarhan, a postdoctoral fellow. In addition to that, they say because of this event, this worldwide ocean event, it enabled the transformation of sand around the animals and the animals to form into rock occur over a matter of hours or years rather than the usual time frame, thousands to millions of years. Ediacara just means a layer. Organisms are all the organisms that were rapidly buried by sand underwater storm events. No, it was a worldwide flood. All right, so they say, you know, how did this happen? Well, I can tell you exactly how. I can tell you every detail about this. And here's the kind of creatures. These are the kind of creatures. You see that? There's a kid up here, about 10 years old. What is that? And I can tell you that was a living creature. All of this green moss growing on there loves to grow on biology, on bloody things. Now, what is that? It appears to be a flea. This is what a flea looks like. You see this? Look at this thing. This is what a flea looks like. That's a flea. Now, what does it look like with these little arms and stuff? Here it is right here. There's the little arms, and there's a little face sticking off, and there's the arms sticking off to the sides. Now, these creatures were absolutely enormous, as you have seen. So, and Yale says there's nothing like them here today, and that's for sure. Some of these things they had to be wiped off the face of the earth, and that's exactly what Zeus did, Jupiter did, ejected Venus. Venus impacted the Earth's atmosphere, wipe the atmosphere right out. If you read Velikovsky, it talks about even the fact that they couldn't start fires after this event because so much of the gases in the atmosphere, the oxygen and hydrogen, had been combined into water. They had not enough oxygen. It took a long time for the oxygen to replenish where you could even start fires. It's very well recorded. And this is the book I wrote a year before Yale took credit for my work. And this was because of my problems with it. I said Mudfossils, Velikovsky, Minds in Collision. It's 99 cents on Amazon. And it just tells of my problems with Yale and the rest of academia. Academia is the ones they're writing about in these ancient texts that say, these are the people that are going to drag you into hell. And that's what I have found. They have no stomach whatsoever for God or Jesus Christ. As a matter of fact, as far as I can tell, they just dislike that whole idea. And the first words out of a person from I dealt with at Yale was, what are you, a creationist? I said, no, I just have mud fossils, and I have some of them were giants. And that was it. And now they're taking credit for it. And they're saying they're only up to 1 meter long, these things. Like hell. That is a hair follicle from a giant that had to be 500 times bigger than us. Now, I just want to throw this in because Yale agrees, but they don't agree with the truth of the matter. That's from a giant, of some huge thing. That's with a muscle attached. That right there is the sebaceous gland. That's the hair shaft. This is the root, and those are the blood supplies. So I have all the evidence. And my stuff, like I say, my giant fingertips and hand and all that stuff is all DNA tested, CAT scanned, what I could get CAT scanned. And so this is all done. And the people that are forcing you to deny this is reality are the academics. I'm telling you right now, there's no truth there whatsoever in academia anymore. Geology is insane, totally, completely wrong. History is obviously not correct. Chemistry isn't even right. Biology, they don't understand a lot of this stuff. They're just starting to understand because of the stuff that I discovered, which is interstitium. It's something they just discovered in the last few years. They agree, yeah, Roger was right. The interstitium's there. We never saw it because Roger looks at things that are still preserved in their completeness. Then they look at things that are flat as a pancake because they've been squished. Look up interstitium, a new found organ. It's the biggest organ in the human body. They never even knew about it until 2018. So if you're putting your faith in academia, you are lost. These were the Titans, apparently, something like that. This is the same stuff, only this is a rock cut from a smaller Titan. All right, now don't forget, this is Apollodorus, and they're talking about it was first thought to be about the 2nd century BC. Then they say, no, it's got to be 2nd century AD. No, because there's nothing about Jesus Christ in here. This is all pre-Jesus Christ. To my way of thinking, and this is just me, you can take it any way you want, I think Jesus Christ was sent by God Almighty, the big God that said, you guys really messed up and, we're going to have to wipe all this out again. And Jesus Christ go down there and tell them, alert them, tell them to get ready, tell them to start thinking and put their faith in you, because if they don't search for you when this final day comes, we don't want them. They didn't take their time. They didn't do their research. They didn't do their work. They didn't understand what life is all about and how important it is to have compassion and all these other things that Jesus Christ talked about. And I'm going to leave it at that right now because you got to find your own journey. I think I found my journey, and thank God I found it before the end of my time, because every day is a gift. So if you don't have the answers by the time you leave this earth, you may just find yourself in Hades or Tartarus or who the hell knows where now. This is new and newer. They have so destroyed our minds by academia telling you that you can't think even about God or about any of this stuff. It's just crazy people do this. Well, I see it just the opposite. And this life and then it's gone. And what happens after that? What do you think happens to you? I just turn into nothing. It's all over. So have a party your ass off now, because once you die, you're dead. No. Once you die, you just start to live. That's my opinion. And you're going to have one good life or one terrible life. And I think it's going to be so terrible that I certainly don't want to go there. Now, I've done some bad things in my life, as we all have, I'm sure. And I feel like, I don't know how I will be judged. I hope that my understanding of my transgressions will give me a little leeway in getting some help out of this realm, because you don't want to be judged according to your things you did before you understood your obligations. That's what I'm hoping. Because that's what I want. Once I realized I'm 100% with you right now, Jesus Christ. You're my guy, 100%. So please judge me on the transgressions prior to my understanding that. That's all I can ask for. And that's what I'm asking for. So I know this was a real long one today, but this gets very deep, and this is very serious. People think, oh, this is just fun and games and exciting. Well, it's all of those things, but it's life too, and I think it's not just this life, because I can't see the possibility that there's just nothing after this. Nobody, no culture on earth says this just stops. You just die and that's it. You're done. No, every single one of them has gods and realms and all of that stuff. So that's what I'm going with right now. I love you all, and I hope you find something out of this. And I hope we can have a discussion about it and open it up to the world to be talked about, instead of considered just insane. And people really will come down on you hard for these opinions and for your research. I do research. Not a single thing I've ever said, that isn't based on something. 99% of my stuff is actual physical evidence. The rest is that evidence relating to these ancient texts. I'm going to leave it at that. I know it's been a long one. I love you all. Thank you. Okay, my outstandingly curious friends. I have been talking about all of the ancient texts and all of the ancient writers and all of the stories and the myths. And I think I have connected some dots that show that these things were not as silly as we always thought they were, even though they are ridiculously crazy. There is truth to them. I believe there's a lot of truth to them. And when I say ridiculously crazy, when I tell you what the original myths were, most people have no clue. This is Apollodorus. Now, apparently he wrote in the 2nd century BC, but now they say, well, maybe not. Maybe it was the 2nd century AD. They have no idea who actually wrote this, but it's attributed to Apollodorus of Alexandria, a Greek scholar. Now, it starts off by, it's just insanely crazy. All I can say is that's true. It is crazy, but I think it is true. It starts off, but the sky was the first who ruled over the whole world. And having wedded the earth, literally having sex with the earth, he begat first the 100-handed. They had 100 hands and 50 heads. And these were the original Titans. And then after these, earth bore him the Cyclopses. Now, everybody knows the Cyclops, the one-eyed guys. Now, I'm just going to cut to the chase, because this gets very long, very detailed, and very crazy. I mean, literally insanely crazy. But, I feel that there's some truth here. Now, we get all the way, book 1, it goes all the way down through here, and the earth, and the sky, and Rhea, and Tartarus, and Demeter, and Hera, and all these crazy things. And then Zeus was born, who was the leader of the mutiny that took over the world and took over this solar system. And he was a Well, let me just cut to the chase, and I'm going to read you what my conclusions are. All right. We started with Gaia and Uranus. That's the earth and the sky. They're personifications in these texts, but they are literally worlds. All right, the earth, the sky. Now, there was 12 titans that were born, and Uranus was the father of these 12 titans. And he allowed them. All right, but then they had the 3 Cyclopses born, one eye, and Uranus did not like them, but he apparently allowed them. But then Gaia had the Hexaneers. Now they had the 100 arms and 50 heads, and they were hated by Uranus. He just absolutely hated them. So he imprisoned them inside the earth, which is Gaia. So Gaia hated them being inside of her, and she wanted them out. Now, Kronos was one of the children of Uranus and Gaia. And Kronos, Gaia wanted her Titan children to rise up against their father. And Kronos was the only one that would do it. So Kronos literally castrated Uranus. He cut him right off with what they call adamantine sickle. So Uranus was the father. Gaia says to Kronos, one of her sons, I want you to attack your father and cut his testicles off. And Kronos stepped up and said, I'll do it. So he did it, and then Kronos now takes charge of the earth and all of the goings on. So Kronos is now the guy in charge. However, the prophecy was that he would be killed, Kronos would be killed by one of his sons or one of his children. So what he did was he ate the kids. He literally ate all of the children. And eventually, though, Gaia tricked, Rhea, which was Zeus. Oh boy, this gets confusing. All right, give me 1 second. Let me just do it this way. Sky ruled over Earth, who was Uranus, ruled over Earth, came up with all these 50 heads and all that stuff, all this crazy stuff. And then they were all sent down to Tartarus, a gloomy place in Hades, as far distant from the earth as earth is distant from the sky. All right, so Sky bound and cast them into Tartarus. So Sky is Uranus, and he cast the Titans, not the Titans, but the all of these crazy guys, the 50-headed, 100-handers, and all that stuff, into Tartarus. He hated them. So he begat children by earth. The Titans, as they were known, Ocean, all these different ones, Tethys, Rhea, and so forth. But then Earth, grieved at the destruction of her children who had been cast into Tartarus, persuaded the Titans to attack their father and gave Kronos the sickle, the adamantine sickle. And they all but Ocean, now Ocean stayed out of it, they all attacked him. And Kronos cut off his father's genitals, threw them into the sea, and from the drops of the flow of blood were born the Furies, to wit, Alec, and Megan. And after having dethroned their father, they brought up their brethren who had been hurled down to Tartarus and committed the sovereignty to Kronos. So Kronos takes over at this point. He's the sovereign. But he again bound and shut them up in Tartarus and wedded his sister Rhea. All right, so Kronos marries Rhea, and they start to have kids. Since both earth and sky foretold him that he would be dethroned by his own son, he swallowed his offspring.